The MS Now news broadcast exposes a troubling dark corner of American politics, how those in positions of power have handled the files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Through an in-depth examination of the program, it becomes clear that the report is far more than a recap of a congressional confirmation hearing. Instead, it serves as a powerful indictment of failed accountability, performative transparency, and the profound conflict between the political interests of the nation's elite and the enduring suffering of Epstein's victims. 1. A humanitarian foundation and the moral weight of victims' voices. The broadcast opens by centering the testimony of Annie Farmer, one of Jeffrey Epstein's surviving victims. This editorial choice deliberately places the human dimension and the lived experience of trauma at the heart of the discussion that follows. Farmer's accusation that Todd Blanche has repeatedly re-traumatized survivors while attempting to bury the case immediately strips away the bureaucratic facade surrounding his confirmation hearing as acting attorney general. Rather than viewing the proceedings as routine political business in Washington, viewers are encouraged to evaluate them through the lens of moral responsibility, justice, and compassion for victims. 2. Legal erosion and the distortion of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The report's first major legal focus is Todd Blanche's alleged failure to comply with the requirements of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Legal analyst Jennifer argues that Blanche's conduct reveals several systemic contradictions. First, he is accused of protecting Epstein's associates by excessively redacting information concerning alleged accomplices and enablers. Second, while aggressively withholding information that could expose powerful figures, he is criticized for failing to adequately safeguard the privacy of survivors, allowing sensitive personal information about victims to be disclosed. Finally, he is accused of circumventing legal requirements by refusing to provide the mandatory redaction logs required under the transparency law. According to the report, these alleged failures by an individual nominated to lead the U.S. Department of Justice raise serious concerns about the erosion of the rule of law when legal obligations collide with political interests. 3. The political psychology behind the communications problem defense. The report raises the stakes further by examining the response from senior administration officials. Vice President J.D. Vance reportedly acknowledged that the administration had mishandled the release of the Epstein files but characterized the controversy as merely a communications problem. The report portrays this as a classic example of political minimization, a strategy designed to reduce the perceived seriousness of a major controversy. By reframing allegations of withholding sensitive information as little more than a public relations mistake, the administration attempts to deflect accusations of concealment or institutional protection. Jennifer forcefully rejects this explanation, describing it as both absurd and degrading to the dignity of survivors. Her pointed rhetorical question whether political leaders would still dismiss the issue as a communications problem if the victims were their own daughters returns the debate to its moral center, highlighting what she characterizes as the political establishment's emotional detachment from the suffering of real people. 4. The consigliere role and the strategy of performative transparency. One of the report's most penetrating analyses concerns Todd Blanche's true role within the administration's power structure. The broadcast openly characterizes him as a consigliere, a trusted political fixer, responsible for carrying out Donald Trump's objectives while shielding the broader system from damaging disclosures. According to the report, Blanche's approach is best described as a strategy of performative transparency. Faced with growing public demands for the release of the Epstein files, Blanche proposed asking federal courts to unseal secret grand jury testimony. The report argues that this was a calculated political maneuver because federal law provides exceptionally strong protections for grand jury secrecy, making judicial approval highly unlikely. Under this interpretation, Blanche could publicly present the administration as pursuing transparency while simultaneously achieving the practical objective of keeping the most sensitive materials sealed after an expected judicial rejection. The report argues that this pattern of symbolic transparency extends to Blanche's personal conduct. Rather than personally committing to remain accessible to survivors, he reportedly delegated requests for meetings to subordinate staff members responsible for scheduling, reinforcing the perception that he sought to distance himself from direct accountability. 5. Elite solidarity and the politics of rewriting history. In its final segment, the report broadens its scope beyond government institutions to examine Epstein's connections within America's financial elite through the example of Catherine Ruemmler, former White House counsel under President Obama and now chief legal officer of Goldman Sachs. Ruemmler's testimony that Epstein had deceived her and that their relationship had been strictly professional is presented by the report as an attempt to rewrite history. The broadcast argues that it strains credibility for one of the nation's most accomplished legal professionals to claim that she neither recognized nor questioned Epstein's conduct, particularly in light of records, suggesting she shared highly personal details about her private life with him. The report further argues that elite protection remained evident in Goldman Sachs' decision not to dismiss Ruemmler, instead retaining her under a lucrative 2-year consulting arrangement. According to the analysis, this episode illustrates a broader pattern in which political and financial elites possess an institutional safety net that activates to protect influential figures whenever major ethical scandals threaten their reputations. Conclusion: viewed through the analytical lens presented by MS Now, the controversy surrounding the Epstein files during Todd Blanche's tenure extends far beyond an ordinary legal dispute. Instead, it is portrayed as a revealing case study of how political power protects itself. Through extensive document redactions, public relations strategies designed to minimize controversy, and carefully constructed displays of transparency that ultimately preserve secrecy rather than expose it. For Epstein survivors, the report suggests, justice remains painfully elusive hidden behind the fortified walls of political institutions and some of America's most powerful financial organizations.